Hey guys, welcome to Collective. It is 5 p.m. on Sunday night, which means it's time for Collective's live liturgy. I am here on the couch with always Fred. Welcome. How was your week?
It was good.
Good.
Great. How was yours?
Pretty dang good. I'm a little older. Had some good time with friends and family, and got to celebrate, which is odd in this world. If you guys are looking for week 3 of Anxiety and Desire live with Peter Rollins, you're in the right place. I think Pete is going to be on with us. He's usually in and out of the Facebook chat, and then he will be with us live on Zoom directly after the service tonight. Hey to Jim. We've got a new friend, Andrew Addison, who's on. We've got some new friends from the UK who have been tuning in. We're so glad you guys are here. Hey Dottie. Hey Bill Brennan and Joy, I assume. David and Cindy Malinowski. Oh, hey Jen Stevenson. How's it going? Jen, Robert, the girls, so good to see you guys. Miss you all. Hope you all are well.
Miss you guys.
Yeah. Looks like Christina and Corey may be tuned in also. So, hey, we love you guys. We miss you all. There's a lot of cars coming through downtown, to tell you the truth. Quite a bit of noise. We're going to get going, and we'll get to the good stuff with Pete Rollins. Hey, Kenny, how's it going? We are going to roll into the liturgy. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's do this, kind of an opening reflection. In one word, if you want to jump in and participate, this could be sort of the coffee hour at church. Hey, Bill Mack, how's it going? Thanks for the belated birthday wishes, everybody. Hey, Michael Clendenin, good to see you. You guys out from Oregon. Man, we've got the whole crew tonight. People all over the world, all over the U.S. Fantastic. I can't remember what I was just saying. Hey, Dan and Susan, good to see you guys as well. So opening reflection tonight. In one word, if you want to share it in the Facebook chat, for you, maybe this week or during this particular season, where is it that you are finding peace in difficult times? Give us one word, and it could be something as simple as friends, could be family, could be Netflix, whatever it is. Where are you finding peace in these sort of troubled times? Look at Dan Hensley. Oh my gosh, front row of the class, teacher's pet, the collective family. That's true. We do find it here, and I'm fortunate I get to actually be here with you guys. Freddie's parents are with us. Welcome, guys. Super glad that you all are with us.
All the way from North Carolina.
Yeah, from North Carolina. They're here filming live. So, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. You were cold as the blood through your bones, and the light which led us from our chosen homes. I was lost, and now I sleep the hours that I can't weep, when all I knew was steeped in blackened hopes. I was lost. Keep the earth below my feet, for all my sweat, my blood runs weak. Let me learn from where I have been. Keep my eyes to serve, my hands to learn. Keep my eyes to serve, my hands to learn. So I was still, and I was under your spell, and I was told by Jesus all was well. So all must be well. Just give me time. Your desires and mine, wrap my flesh in ivy and entwine. For all must be well. Keep the earth below my feet, for all my sweat, my blood runs weak. Let Good times. We're rocking this computer to
Yeah.
pieces. Welcome. If you're joining us, welcome to Collective, our live liturgy. I'm here with Fred. My name is Ben. For those of you that don't know me, we are really, really glad that you all are here with us this evening. If you're tuning in for week 3 of Anxiety and Desire, we're excited that you're with us. Our good friend Pete Rollins is on with us. He's going to be here live this evening. He's going to join us for, if the last 2 weeks serve, what promises to be a great conversation. We're going to get a wrap up. So if you're just tuning in, if you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Pete Rollins is here live with this cool little group of people in DeLand, Florida. Don't jump off. You'll get to catch up. I'm going to ask Pete tonight to begin by summarizing the last 2 weeks of the series, which are going to include the anxiety that comes from the tension between having and not having, the tension between knowing and not knowing. Tonight we're going to talk about the tension of belief, believing and not believing. We're going to hear a great story about an atheist disciple. It's going to be awesome. We've got some fun music. We're not totally sure we can pull it off, but we've practiced it a couple times, and it seems like it's going to be some fun. So thanks again to Andrew Brooks, who was with us last week. We had a great time with him. He's going to be back with us hopefully pretty quickly. Fred, why don't you give us a quick update on the Community Problems Assembly? We were pushing people to go to that. That happened last Monday, so where do we stand?
Well, we had a phenomenal showing. We had about 440 people, we think, that were on Zoom. It was kind of hard to tabulate because some people use their phones for audio, which is cool, but so we're still trying to figure out exactly how many people, but we almost hit the limit of how many people that we could get in the Zoom. So that was pretty cool. While we were there, we had all of the candidates running for county council, including the 2 candidates running for county chair, and we got them to commit to supporting the creation of a housing trust fund if elected in November. They all said yes to that.
That was awesome.
We had some spur of the moment negotiations on the $7 million that we believe it should be funded with $7 million a year, and Pastor Ben stepped up to negotiate on that with some of the
That's me. For those of you that
candidates.
don't, if you've never heard me ever in your life called Pastor Ben, he's actually talking about me. I am an
Well, I
ordained
think
pastor.
I think that you were listed on there as the Reverend.
The Reverend
Benjamin
I know.
Collins.
And
Yeah.
they had me wear a collar because there's
You gotta
power
put the
in the
collar on.
office, even if there's not power in this
Yeah.
goof. But I put the collar on, and then
So if you
representatives
weren't
take us
able
seriously.
to make it, we did record it. It will be going on YouTube.
It's
So,
worth watching.
Yes, yeah. So we had some drama, but mostly I think it was a win. We got most of the candidates committed to exactly what we've been pushing for, which is the creation of a housing trust fund. We also had some exciting updates with our youth committee, and ultimately we decided as an organization, we voted to focus some of our efforts on a statewide collaboration focusing on adult criminal justice reform. So civil citations for adults that make stupid mistakes that don't need a lifelong arrest record.
So if you're like sort of on the fence, or you're tangential with religion, with faith, but maybe you're coming in from the philosophy side and you're like, okay, I can get on board with Peter Rollins. So tonight we're going to talk about belief and not belief. But if you're one of those people that looks at the church and goes, yeah, but what does the church actually ever really do? They get together and they argue about what they believe. They argue about these invisible things that we can't prove. But what do? This is what we do. And even if it's like, oh, well, you're just showing up on Zoom, yeah, but changing things.
Yeah.
Getting these commitments from our representatives. So yeah, we're really excited about the ways that we are able to see some of our people power, some of the impact that we have just by showing up together and voicing our values. And part of the reason this is such a natural fit with a community of faith is because we practice this every week. We get together and say our values every week in the community statement that we're going to hear in just a second. So again, thank you guys for being here. Welcome. Thanks so much for the update, Fred. We've got a bunch of good stuff coming in the life of this congregation. I do want to tell you guys before I get into the basics for this week, if you have an opportunity to make a commitment to be on next week for the live stream, definitely recommend that you do. We're going to roll out a little bit of vision stuff for what's coming through the end of the year and then after that. And I think there's some building excitement on the part of some of the leadership of Collective because we feel like we're right on the edge of having our certificate of occupancy. And as soon as we get that, there are going to be things for you to do. We're going to need your help. For you that are willing to be physically in person, and we think that we can do that safely in small doses, We'll need your help up and around the building. For those of you that are still going to be sort of quarantined and protecting for that reason, absolutely, we support that. There are going to be things that you can do from your house, from Zoom meetings. There are going to be ways to help. So we're very excited about that. We hope that you guys will be. Also, this week, the usual stuff. Monday, yoga. I saw a great post from Sarah, our yogi, about the stuff that's coming tomorrow. So if you want to jump on yoga tomorrow night, start the week well. That's 6 p.m. It's going to be shared first from the Road Ohm yoga page, and then we'll share it from the collective page. Tuesday, Occupy Trilogy, or the sermon crowdsourcing liturgy group that plans what we're doing right now. Jump on Zoom, join us for that, and some great discussion. And then Thursday at 5:30, Collective Cares is going to be meeting. Dan and his commitment to the wholeness and the wellness of this community of people is really working towards getting some opportunities for people to be safely in person, social distance and all of that. But because we're knowing how much of a toll it's taking, especially on already marginalized and isolated communities, to be apart from one another. So Dan's trying his best. Dan Hensley, he can post what's going on this coming week for Collective Cares. Dan, thank you so much for the work that you do. Whether you're with us live right now, whether you're listening later, podcast, sermon video, thank you guys for being with us. Your presence makes us who we are. Let's listen to our community statement, check out this video. And again, these are the values we say and we try to practice every week. Check this out.
We value highly the metaphor of journey.
We're different people from different places and backgrounds.
Representing a multi-generational community, and we travel different paths.
So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us,
Next to us.
Or in conversation with us.
We challenge ourselves to be sensitive.
knowing this community includes a diverse group of people.
From lifelong followers of Jesus
to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist.
We strive to avoid offense.
Ask good questions.
articulate and explain our responses.
We don't assume fluency in the Bible,
Spirituality or church language.
Because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity.
So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
We do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
In a spirit of love and grace.
Everything in the spirit of love
and grace.
So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Thanks, guys. So that is a bit of who we are, what we're about. As we sort of shift into our content for tonight, into the inspiration, the first word that's going to spark the conversation that follows, we'd like to do that by starting with some silence, silent meditation. If you use a mantra, you can do that. This is an invitation into whatever form of silence, prayer, openness, however you cultivate your ability to get ready to receive what we're going to get in the content and in the conversation. We want to set this time aside for that. So we provide some drone footage that's really peaceful. If you want to use that, you can leave the sound on, you can turn the sound off, you can close your eyes. Whatever you're doing though, we encourage you to get a little bit more comfortable in your chair. We sit for about 3 minutes. So if you can maybe sit up so you can get a breath all the way into your diaphragm real deep. If you can get your feet on the floor, whether or not you have a foot tambourine on. And then just take a cleansing breath and let that lead into about 3 minutes of silence. When you get distracted, when your monkey mind starts to chatter, let it go. Return to your breath. We'll sit silently for about 3 minutes. Let's do it.
Another dose of serotonin, I'll be okay. Silent street lights dim to glow, my conscience faded down. Suddenly my skin becomes heavenly. I can see it patently, who I used to be. Tell my friends I had to go. Maybe I need to rest, but I'll confess to microphones all the dreams I've wrecked. I felt pretty things. There's one best of me. I'm tied so markedly to who I used to be. I spent all I had till the teller told me I had nothing left. I breathed into a bag. I envisioned distant beaches in my head. I don't replay them anymore. All the songs I sang, done up in reams of what you wore. Some nights I've come to hate. Time turns everything will change irrevocably. Still caught so handedly by who I used to be.
Anxiety, huh?
Yeah.
Anxiety and Desire. That was an original from Freddie Wilson. Where can we find you?
Where can you find me?
Freddie
Well,
Penn?
it's here every Sunday.
Right, here every Sunday.
Yeah, I'm
what
on
about-
Spotify
Okay.
and Apple, I think, Music.
Okay.
All of them.
Freddie Penn.
All the ones. Yeah, Freddie Penn.
Freddie.
Penn.
2 N's.
Yeah, that's my pen name.
2 N's. Don't follow Freddie Penn with 1 N. We don't know him. We're not
No.
sure if that's any good.
He's
Freddie
actually
Penn
a
with
pretty
2
bad
N's.
guy.
Okay, so
honestly,
Freddie
yeah.
Penn with 2 N's. You heard it here. Don't fall for that. Welcome. If you're finding us looking for Pete Rollins, understandable. We are in week 3. We're attempting to land a series of conversations, let's say around anxiety and desire. Not to put too fine a point on it, rather than giving you answers or solving problems, we've sort of built a constellation of a few different conversations around anxiety and desire, because anxiety is something we're all living with, as we just sang about, as you guys have shown each week in these conversations, and some very real and raw, honest, vulnerable stuff in the Zooms afterwards. Especially, we've had some friends who have gotten to be direct with Pete and with us, and push us on the fact that philosophy and theology take us so far, but that we're also humans who are existentially experiencing the anxiety of this moment, the anxiety related to the experience of not knowing, the experience of not having, And tonight we're going to get into the experience of belief and lack thereof. So tonight we dive into our last story before our last talk with Pete. This will set the table for some great conversation. So check it out, ladies and gentlemen, Peter Rollins and the Atheist Disciple.
I want to read to you the story of the rapture. Just as it was written by those prophets of old, the last days of the earth overflowed with suffering and pain. In those dark days, a huge pale horse rode through the earth with death upon its back and hell in its wake. During this great tribulation, the earth was scorched with the fires of war. Rivers ran red with blood. The soil withheld its fruit, and disease descended like a mist. One by one, all the nations of the earth were brought to their knees. Far from all the suffering, high up in the heavenly realm, God watched the events unfold with a heavy heart. An ominous silence had descended upon heaven as the angels witnessed the earth being plunged into darkness and despair. But this could only continue for so long. At the designated time, God stood upright, breathed deeply, and addressed the angels. The time has come for me to separate the sheep from the goats, the healthy wheat from the inedible chaff. Having spoken these words, God slowly turned to face the world and called forth to the church with a booming voice. Rise up and ascend to heaven, all of you who have sought to escape the horrors of this world by sheltering beneath my wing. Come to me, all who have turned from this suffering world by calling out, Lord, Lord. In an instant, millions were caught up in the clouds and ascended into the heavenly realm, leaving the suffering world far behind them. Once this great rapture had taken place, God paused for a moment and then addressed the angels, saying, "It is done. I have separated the people born of my Spirit from those who have turned from me. It is time now for us to leave this place and take up our residence in the earth, for it is there that we shall find our people, the ones who would forsake heaven in order to embrace the earth, the few who would turn away from eternity itself to serve at the feet of a fragile, broken life that passes from existence in but an instant." And so it was that God and the heavenly host left that place to dwell among those who had rooted themselves upon the earth, quietly supporting the ones who had forsaken God for the world and thus who bore the very mark of God, the few who had discovered heaven in the very act of forsaking it. Hello there, and welcome to the last session in this three-part series that's exploring the nature of faith as a type of embrace of contradiction. In each of the sessions, I'm taking a different thinker to look at the theme. So in the first session, we took C.S. Lewis to explore the notion of a truth that transcends the binary of knowing and unknowing, a type of truth that manifests itself whenever we enter into unknowing and find a type of knowledge embedded within it. In the second session, we looked at the theme of joy, a joy that transcends the categories of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Joy is a type of affirmation of life and of meaning and of depth that we discover when we really delve into dissatisfaction and find something satisfying within it. And so today, what I want to look at is the notion of a type of devotion that transcends the categories of theism and atheism. A type of devotion or religious life that somehow delves into the darkest heart of atheism and finds an affirmation of theism within it. So to start with, I want to look at the mystics, because the mystics were the first group to really understand how theism and atheism work together. Often we think of these as two opposing camps that either fight each other or have to tolerate each other. But for some of the mystics, they began to see how atheism and theism not only dance together, not only critique each other, but also enrich each other, challenge each other, and make each other richer in the process. So we take someone like Meister Eckhart, one of the greatest of the mystics, who once prayed, "God, rid me of God." Now what he means there is that every time you say the word God, every time you try to name what ultimate reality is, that naming doesn't grasp what you're trying to say. And so at the same time, the person of devotion is the one who also denames God. So every theism, it corresponds to an atheism. Every claim must also undermine itself. Every theological statement is under erasure. This can be called a type of theopoetics, or what the philosopher Jean-Luc Marion calls denomination. So you nominate, which means you name, and then you denominate, which means you dename. So in the Lord's Prayer, for example, you have the opening lines, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." So in the first line, you have the name Father. But in the second line, you have the idea that this name is hallowed, meaning holy, meaning other than we can imagine. So it is named as Father and then denamed, saying not like you understand that word. There is something that is not being grasped in that very language. This is a type of theopoetics. Now, Anselm was probably the mystic or the philosopher who gave the most systematic reason for this. He argued that there's three levels to reality, three ways something can exist. Something can exist only in the mind and not in reality. Something can exist in the mind and in reality. Or something can exist in reality and not in the mind. So if I'm going to paint something, at first it's just in my mind, it's not in reality. And that's the lowest level of existence. You can't touch it or taste it or see it. It's just a mental image in my brain. But then I paint the painting. And now the painting exists in reality and it exists in the mind. Other people can look at the painting, other people can conceptualize it. And those two levels of being basically cover everything. Things exist either only in the mind like unicorns or exist in the mind and in reality like horses. But then Anselm said that if God exists, God must exist at the highest level. And the highest level is something that exists in reality but that cannot be contained in the mind. And so this idea led the mystics to always embrace a type of theism as in a way deeper than theism. That denying your conceptions of ultimate reality is part of how you try to approach ultimate reality. You're standing in something that you cannot quite grasp. But I want to look primarily now at the work of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who also explores this relationship between atheism and theism in a slightly different way. I want to look at Dietrich Bonhoeffer's last works, his thinking while he was imprisoned shortly before he was executed by the Nazis. In this work, The Letters and Papers from Prison, Bonhoeffer starts to think about a notion that he calls religionless Christianity. And he says in that work that one must live as though God does not exist. And that as you live as though God does not exist, you live fully before God and with God. So Bonhoeffer is saying here that we have to fully embrace a type of atheism. And it's in that embrace of atheism that we somehow affirm theism. Now, to understand what he means, you've got to realize that Bonhoeffer is critiquing a certain notion of God that has been popular right through Christianity up until the present age. And he's critiquing it not in the sense of saying that it's always wrong, but saying that this notion of God is now becoming redundant. It's now losing its power. And he calls this notion of God the Deus ex machina. Now, a Deus ex machina is a term from Greek theatre in which some playwright would be writing their play and they'd maybe kill off a character for dramatic effect. And then later on, they would want to bring the character back. And so what they would do is they would have a god or some angel or whatever descend from the theatre roof, do the magical act of bringing the character back to life or whatever other miraculous act needs to happen, and then would be wheeled off again. And Bonhoeffer said that God was a type of Deus ex machina that we often brought into life when our knowledge or our courage failed. In terms of knowledge, God was often brought in when we didn't know something, when we looked at the world and we were confronted with something that defied our understanding. And so we would bring God in as an explanation. And in terms of courage, Bonhoeffer says that what we would do is when we're faced with guilt, with death, with the difficulties of life, we would wheel God in as a comfort. And Bonhoeffer understands why we would do that, but he says that ultimately this notion of God has to die. And that if we're trying to give people this notion of God, we're actually trying to make them weak again, right? There are people now who are strong enough to realize we don't know everything and don't need to bring in an explanation to fill a gap, who are comfortable saying that yes, there'll always be stuff that we don't know, that we can continue to look into the world, we continue to do research in the sciences and in philosophy, and we don't need to somehow have some totalizing explanation. And there are people who are not afraid of death, that are not afraid of suffering, that are able to bear that burden of existence. And Bonhoeffer, far from wanting to make those people back into children, wants to be able to affirm that and think that that is strength and good. He says actually that the Deus ex machina is pointless, ignoble, and unchristian. He says it's pointless because a lot of people have moved beyond it. It doesn't make sense to people anymore. There's, of course, he says, some people for whom it does make sense. But for the vast majority of people, or at least where society is going, that type of God just doesn't really resonate. Secondly, he says it's ignoble, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to appeal to the weakest part of people. You're trying to make people selfish, think about themselves, think about their own suffering, and then God comes in as an answer, rather than meeting them in their strength and in their affirmation of life. And then finally, he says it's unchristian because you're confusing one stage of belief in God with every possible stage, saying that there's only one way to define that word within Christianity, when Bonhoeffer is saying, no, that guise, that understanding, that definition can die and another one arise. So what is Bonhoeffer's view on this new God that arises after the death of God? Bonhoeffer calls this religionless Christianity. It is a type of Christianity in which we fully give ourselves to the world. And in giving ourselves to the world and to one another, we find a deeper affirmation of life. We find a new understanding of the sacred arising. The sacred is not an object that we love, but rather the depth dimension that we experience in the act of love itself. Interestingly, we can turn to the Jewish philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, because he had a really interesting definition of theism and atheism. Now, when you hear this definition, you've got to realize that he's defining this within a particular Jewish context. So this is a definition that's very different from what we hear in our daily lives. Levinas reflects deeply on the Torah and says that theism is a type of sensitivity to the neighbor. He says that every face we see has one statement written on it. It is always saying, do not murder me. Do not objectify, do not destroy, do not defy. And theism is a sensitivity to that call in the face of the other. And atheism is a closing down to that call in the other. So for Levinas, there is this weak call in the world that is asking us to treat one another with respect, with dignity, and with love. And theism has nothing to do with the belief in gods or a god, but rather an ability to sensitize ourselves to that call. While atheism is a way of creating a protective barrier around us so that we do not let that call impact our lives and destabilize and decenter us. Now this connects a little bit with Bonhoeffer, because Bonhoeffer is saying that if you embrace atheism, as in a full embrace of the earth without transcendence, without the need of a God of the gaps who fills in the absence in our knowledge, or a God who we can go to when we lack courage, we get rid of that and we embrace life. He says we enter into a type of theism. And the type of theism we discover is similar to that theism that Emmanuel Levinas is talking about when we open ourselves up to the sensitivity of that call. So everything I've been doing in these 3 sessions has been exploring a type of dialectic faith, a faith that stands between 2 extremes and brings them together. A faith that can live between knowing and unknowing, between satisfaction and dissatisfaction, and between theism and atheism, and one that brings all of these together in a faith that is about resolute commitment to the earth and to one another, but a resoluteness that also has humility, one in which we must act in fear and trembling, responding to that cry in the other that says, do not murder me, responding resolutely, and yet with humility, knowing that our response might be wrong.
Oh, Pete, thanks again for the amazing content, for the invitation to reflection. As usual, we always come back to this symbol, to the bread, to the cup, to body, to blood. And rather than me connecting dots, I'm going to trust you. And I'm simply going to remind us of the value of these symbols a little bit for our congregation. And then I'm going to invite you to reflect in whatever ways that's meaningful for you. I think for us, obviously, the invitation to practice opening ourselves to the call in the face of our neighbor is something we're always trying to cultivate. And that's as simple as the vulnerability of friendship, that we're close, that we share vulnerability, that we don't lie to each other. And that's also in the vulnerability of the unknown neighbors, the people for whom we're trying to fight for affordable housing. And part of what we seem to continue to come back to, and part of what I hear in what Pete shared tonight, is, for me, maybe the healthy thing is rather than having to choose or feeling like we have to push others to choose, an understanding of God that is either transcendent, other, God as a person, God as a being, or the understanding that God, that the body of Christ is this community of people, that this is, that a spirit or a consciousness emerges when people get together to try to learn love. And to try to learn love is to admit that we don't know how to do it, that we're trying not only to wrap our minds around it, but to allow our hearts to do it. And I think that's some of the openness that Pete is inviting us to cultivate. But we understand that invitation, like any invitation issued by love, that calls us to make commitments that are bigger than ourselves. And those are really, really hard. And very often, those commitments lead to sacrifice, which feels like a bunch of little deaths, like body separated from blood, like so many internal contradictions. When doing the right thing seems to hurt. When asking really important questions seems to make things worse, not better. And the invitation is always to come back to the open table, not because it's a sacred object that promises an answer, but because it is a community of belonging. And you know that as you seek, you will not be alone. Not alone in the absence of belief, not alone in the confusion and contradiction of religion, but a communion, a belonging of one another, the kingdom of God. That's what we're talking about. So let's sing about it.
Let's do it.
Thanks, guys. What a great liturgy. Pete, thanks again for that amazing content. For all of you who have stuck with us through the liturgy, thanks again. The Zoom link is going to go up in just a moment, and we are going to head into a great conversation with Pete. We're a little bit early, so hang with us. Jump in the Zoom link. We'll let you in as soon as we're ready to roll, as soon as Pete gets rolling, and then like I said, we'll have Pete give us a little summary. I think he already kind of did that pretty well in the video tonight, but we'll get him to help us land the series. Any questions you guys have, just make sure you let us know when you get in the Zoom. We'll have an opportunity for y'all to talk directly to Pete. and bring this content home. Thank you guys again so much for being here with us. If you want more info, email info@wearecollectivechurch.com. You've already found us on social media. If you want the highest quality feed for the live stream experience, please do jump over to YouTube and find us at youtube.com/wearecollectivechurch. You can subscribe there, and that will get you a chat feature. You can chat also on Facebook. Thanks for engaging. We really appreciate you guys not just watching this, but being a part of it, offering the feedback, jumping over to Zoom, and helping us really experience community life, even in a tough time. If you would, as we close, bring your hands together as a symbol of our intention. Bring them first to our foreheads for clarity of thought, to our lips for clarity of speech, to our hearts for clarity of action, so that in all that we say and do, love would be our first thought, our first word, and our first deed. Grace and peace. We'll see you all on the Zoom.